So hello everyone, good morning to those from Europe and good afternoon to those from Asia. I'm Fiona, so I'm the MC for the webinar today and the marketing for UBIS AQM. Thank you again for those who have come to our webinar for the first time and welcome to those who are newcomers. We are very happy today to have our third webinar that Francesca will deliver streaming and environmental challenges for textile and leather production. And we were very happy that in the past two webinars, we had very good feedback. And we hope you will enjoy this upcoming webinar as much as we did in the last 2 weeks. So without further ado, I will pass the time now to Francesca. Over to you, please, Francesca.
Yes, thank you, Fiona. So hello, everyone. So I'm very happy to be again connected with all of you today to discuss about the three main environmental challenges for textile and leather production sites. So just a brief introduction about myself in case we have people joining this webinar for the first time. So I'm saying this because we had two previous webinars for the series about environment. So this is the third one. So my name is Francesca Giometti. I'm the Senior Environmental Advisor and Training Manager for the company Eurofins AQM. This presentation is about 45 minutes, and then we will have time for question and answer. You will get as well a link after this webinar to access the recording on YouTube, and you can also get the presentation. So, what is the agenda today? We are going to discuss about three big challenges for the textile and leather industry. The first one is about hazardous chemicals. Big hot topic for the industry to get ready to have a system to get rid of hazardous chemicals in the production. So we know there is a lot of public information about these banned and restricted substances, but how can the factory be prepared to address this topic? This is something we are going to discuss today. Actually, this first challenge is going to be the one I will present more in details because it's one of the most important, and also because if you want to address the second and third challenges about wastewater and about hazardous waste, at the end, you still need to address the problem at the source, which is the hazardous substances used in the production. So challenge number one is the key, I would say, also to get improvements on the other topics, which are wastewater and hazardous waste. So the most important is to understand very well how can the factory get the resources and the tools to be ready to work on getting rid of hazardous chemicals. That's the main challenge. So let's start with this. I would like you to have a look to these two pictures showing the chemical label. Can we have, Fiona, the first poll, please? We have a question for you. I want to know, so remember that this is anonymous, huh? So don't worry, no one will know what you are answering, but we propose you to indicate what are the hazards which are related to this symbol that you see in the product. So you have different possibilities, and one thing which is important, more than one answer can be selected. Okay, there is actually more than one answer here.
Yeah, and I can see people are voting fast, so we can give you maybe some 15 or 20 seconds before we review the answer.
Okay, I want just to say that all the pictures I'm showing during the webinar are pictures taken inside the factories.
Yeah, and when people are voting, we just want to remind you that you can raise questions anytime by typing your questions in the questions box. And we will address all the questions after Francesca's presentation. And in case we don't have enough time for that, don't worry, we'll follow up the questions by email. Right, the voting is close to 80%, so shall we see the
Yes.
result now?
Yes. Okay, thank you, Fiona. So I hope everyone can see the poll results. So what can we notice is that 50% of the respondents indicated that the symbol shown in the picture correspond to the hazard respiratory sensitizer. Okay, this is indeed true. Now I can look at the other answers, and I can see that some people selected as well acute toxicity and carcinogen. So 24% selected acute toxicity, but actually this is not correct because the symbol for acute toxicity is the symbol with oh my God, I don't have the word in English, the skills, the head of the dead. Sorry for my English. So this symbol that you see on the picture is respiratory sensitizer, indeed. It is also carcinogen, and it is also reproductive toxicity. And not only, actually. So that's very important. When you see a symbol on a packaging, on a chemical product, you have to investigate looking at the hazard statements because one symbol can have different, can be related to different hazards. So we can close the pool.
Sure.
So as I was explaining, this symbol can be related to different hazards. So I give you some examples again. For example, if you see on the label the symbol again, this one, you can have perhaps indicated in the label the hazard statement H361, suspected of damaging fertility or the unborn child. But you can have as well on a different chemical product the same symbol with a different hazard statement. For example, H334, and it is may cause allergy or asthma symptoms or breathing difficulties if inhaled. So this is very important because it means that the identification of hazards require the analysis from the management in the factory. So the managers should be able to understand when they receive a chemical product order, they need to analyze the information. It's not just looking at the symbols, you need as well to look at the hazard statements. And so where do we find the hazard statement in the label? If this is a proper labeling system, as I mentioned last time, there is a reference, which is GHS, Global Harmonized System for the labeling and identification of chemicals. But the hazard statement is as well indicated in the safety data sheet. So this document must be as well available on site. So why I'm talking about this? Because I want to raise awareness about the characteristics of chemicals that we find in the factory. When I used to go on site and I was visiting a lot of factories in Bangladesh, India, China, Turkey, Cambodia, very, very often I was facing, identifying chemical product with these symbols. So it's very important to pay attention to the hazards indicated on the products. Okay, I would like to discuss another case study, which is the permanganate potassium used in denim production for bleaching. So you can see on this first picture, here we have some permanganate potassium. So it looks like a kind of a pink liquid. And this is what you can see very often in the denim factories. They are doing what we call the PP spray on jeans. So permanganate potassium spraying. This is one very common step for the final treatment of jeans. And I also post on this slide an article which I could found on internet, of course, and it is a very recent one. It was published on July 2019, and you can see it is published by an organization, Clean Cloth Campaign, and it is mentioning that there are some concerns raised other health impact of chemical use in denim bleaching. Indeed, the permanganate potassium is a chemical product with some consequences, which can have consequences on the health of the workers if the workers are not well protected. Of course, it depends on the working conditions. If we look at this picture, we see that there are 3 workers manipulating a jeans, and there is one guy spraying the permanganate potassium. You can see that they don't have gloves, so the skin is not protected. This guy has maybe a respiratory mask if there is a filter, but these 2, they don't have a proper respiratory mask. They have a fabric mask. Moreover, you can see behind, why are they not using the hangers for the jeans? They should be, the jeans should be on the hangers, and there should be a water curtain, because the water is actually absorbing part of the chemical emissions. So I show you indeed other pictures. Here, this is the correct process actually. The garment product should be put on hangers, and there is this water curtain behind the jeans. However, still here we might have a little problem regarding how well protected are the workers. So we have hazardous chemicals in the production, such as permanganate potassium, and we know that we need to have some protective measures taken to protect the workers. And unfortunately, this is not the case most of the time. So in this case, if we know we are facing difficulties to make the factories implement the good practices to protect the workers, the best solution will be to eliminate the problem at the source. So it means trying not to use this hazardous chemical. So finding alternatives to permanganate potassium. So I show you these 2 pictures. Fiona, can we have please the pool about picture 1 and picture 2? Okay, so can you please tell me what you think about picture 1 and picture 2? Do you think the situation is acceptable in picture 1, yes or no? And do you think the situation is acceptable in picture 2? So there is a little mistake, but consider that the second question is about picture 2.
Sorry for the title.
So I just again, question 1 is about picture 1, and question 2 is about picture 2. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's close to 80%. So let's close the
Yeah.
pool. Let's see the result.
Okay. So as I was expecting, most of the participants are indicating that the picture 1 situation is not acceptable. And I was also expecting that more people will be convinced that the situation in picture 2 is more acceptable. So what are the differences? In the first picture, we can see that the worker is not wearing gloves, or at least maybe on one hand, but not on the second hand. So of course we can, yes, think, okay, that's not okay because he should wear gloves. In the second picture, you say, okay, maybe this guy is wearing gloves, so that's enough. Actually, in both pictures, the situation is not acceptable, not even in the second picture. Why? Okay, maybe the hands are protected with gloves, but what about the other parts of the body? You have to imagine that when you are spraying a chemical, like in the PP spray process, the vapors, the emissions from chemicals are very volatile, of course, and so they can affect every part of the body, not only the hands. So the full body of the guy should be protected. As well, what is important is the protection for the eyes. So it's not, we cannot see very well on the second picture, but it seems that this guy is indeed wearing some protection for the eyes. But you see the arms of the guy are not protected. So that's a problem. It's very simple actually to know how, to know which personal protective equipment should be worn during this process. You need to check the safety data sheet of the potassium permanganate. And here, so I have a screenshot of a safety data sheet of potassium permanganate, and you can see in the section 2 about hazard identification, you have a list. So you have a list of hazard, and here I have I'm focusing on the precautionary measures. In precautionary measures, it is indicated where protective gloves, protective clothing, so you see this is for the full body, eye protection and face protection. Okay, that's very, very important, and all the information is documented actually. So again, now I'm really insisting on the first responsibility in a factory the documentation provided about the chemicals product. He needs to read the safety data sheet. He's the one who is responsible to read the safety data sheet and identify which personal protective equipment are needed. You will ask me, okay, what are the alternatives to permanganate potassium in denim production? So I'm not saying that it's always easy to find an alternative, but most of the time you have to imagine that it's now been a long time the industry is aware of hazardous chemical. Okay, this is not something new at all. So the whole industry, and in particular the chemical industry, is working on finding alternatives to hazardous chemicals. And there are some technologies, and there are as well some new, I would say, new chemical formulation invented, innovated by the chemical industry to be able to propose some solutions. So, of course, there can be some costing issues, but alternatives are being developed. And if you do some research, you can find a lot of options. So here I'm just mentioning some few examples. You might have heard about the ozone technology. which is indeed the ozone machine, is a way to do the finishing of denim without using water and some hazardous chemical. And then you have as well, as I was saying, some chemical industry developing some innovative bleaching agents considered as more environmental friendly and sometimes definitely based on organic material. So alternatives exist. Of course, they might be a cost issue, or they might be the knowledge, the awareness, the accessibility, but the industry is changing to find alternatives. If alternatives are difficult to implement, still the information can be found in the safety data sheet of the hazardous chemicals to at least try to protect the workers from the chemicals. Okay, this is more practical. Where to start when you want to address the challenge of getting rid of hazardous chemicals in the production? I want to propose you two important steps. The first one is you need to assess if the factory is prepared to start. There are some prerequisites which are very, very important. And then you can also think about what is the toolbox that the factory needs. First of all, to be well prepared to address the topic of getting rid of hazardous chemicals in the production, the factory must appoint a manager to be responsible for chemical management. This is fundamental. You cannot send a restricted substances list to your factories, and your factories are not organized to understand the topic. So there must be someone who is appointed to understand how to read a safety data sheet, how to read the documentation provided by the chemical supplier. This person should be a bit familiar with how to conduct a risk assessment, identifying what I was showing in the safety data sheet, being able to read what are the hazard statements, what are the precautionary measures to be taken. This is not, I guess, so difficult at this stage. It's just a matter of organization and being very, having the time, actually. It's a matter of time. When a factory is not looking at all of this, it's not because it's so difficult, it's because no one is appointed to be in charge of this. So the first step is appointing a manager and saying this manager is responsible to check the safety data sheet, to do the risk assessment, to do a chemical inventory, to understand then what are the customer's chemical restrictions, and then being familiar with test reports, with chemical product certificates, etc. So appointing a manager is fundamental. So I did some research. I think it was, sorry, I see there is an internet connection unstable, so I waited. Okay, I thought, okay, it's going to be interesting to see if we have some managers appointed for chemical management, but can we find some job descriptions? So this is, of course, something which is done during an environmental audit. The auditor is going to investigate. It's not only who is appointed, but of course we need to interview this person and to ask what are this person's tasks and responsibilities. In any case, I did as well a research on LinkedIn because I have a lot of contacts from people I met in Bangladesh, in India, and in other countries. And so maybe in my case, it was a good idea to say, okay, let's see if among all these people I met and the contacts of contacts in the textile industry, I can identify people with this job. So indeed, it was a good news because I could see that I had some different good results. It means indeed there are some people with so the title could be manager, chemical store, senior executive, environment and chemical, but still you can see that the responsibilities are more or less the same. and they are in charge of safety data sheet translated in local language. They need to update the chemical inventory. They need to make sure there is a training for the workers. They need to be to develop the procedures and the policies around chemical. So that's very positive, actually. If at least there is a person in the factory clearly appointed to be in charge of this topic, this is a good start. So I would like to ask you a question. So we will have, Fiona, the pool about,
yes.
indeed, if people, okay, according to you, factories having an appointed manager in charge of chemical management is still not common, but problems of skills, etc. So let us know what you think.
Yeah,
So,
I think the pool result is quite interesting. Let's see the results now. Is that okay?
yes, let's see the answers. Okay, so 30% of the respondents said most of the time this is an additional task for the compliance manager. Indeed, I agree. Yes, that's what is another 20% is indicating that this is still rare, except in big factories. Okay, I agree as well with this this answer. So, is it true that factories are used to have a compliance manager who is in charge of compliance with the laws and regulation regarding mostly social aspect, health and safety? And because now they know environmental topics are as well becoming more and more important for the brands, they ask the compliance manager to be, the compliance manager in this case is usually asked as well to cover some of the environmental compliance issues. So it is true that the compliance manager can be the one in charge of chemical management for the factory. However, you can imagine that the compliance manager has a lot of things to do. He or she has a big scope with health and safety and social compliance. So it might not be so easy for the compliance manager to be as well focusing on chemical management. And I must say that in my experience, when I was visiting very big factories, it is true that big factories with more resources, human resources, could indeed appoint a manager to be 100% dedicated to chemical management. It's true that this is a common figure. However, I still think that more and more factories understand how important it is to have a person in charge of chemical, And so this is going to change in the future. We will have more and more appointed manager for this. Okay, so we can close. Next slide. So what about the toolbox that can be very useful for the factory? Here, I just want to give you an insight about some key documents and let's say procedures the factory should implement. So of course, first of all, they need to know to have a compilation of all the customer requirements regarding banned and or restricted substances that is applied to all chemicals used in the facility. So a compilation of the requirements, and as well, of course, an understanding of what are the restrictions in the different countries where the products will be sent. Another important document is the chemical purchasing policy. Actually, this is a key document because the factory needs to demonstrate that they have a process to select chemical suppliers. It's not just like based on the price of product. It is based on what information and how transparent the chemical supplier is. Related to this documentation, there is the list of accepted evidence of chemical product compliance with restricted substances list. So I don't know how familiar you are with this topic. It's a bit more complex, but probably we can have a dedicated webinar about this because we could discuss for a long time about it. But just to make it simple, when you want to check that a chemical product is compliant with a restricted substances list, you have different type of evidence. You can have a test report, you can have a chemical product certificate, you can have a label. Sorry, it's not a label, it's more a certification. And you can have as well a letter which is a declaration from the chemical supplier. You can have a positive list from the chemical supplier. So there are different types of evidence. So again, the factory needs to decide which evidence they accept, which evidence are reliable. So if the factory is working on this, on having criteria to accept evidence, this is a good step. It's good to have this in your toolbox. And finally, another tool I want to mention is a monitoring process. It means being organized, having a file on a computer. It could be in the chemical inventory that you add some columns to indicate, okay, for this chemical product, did I get an evidence from the chemical supplier about the compliance with restricted substances, or I didn't get anything yet, but I'm trying to obtain the document. It's just a tracking system, but this is very, very important. Organization is key when a factory wants to be ready to demonstrate how they can phase out hazardous chemicals. So this is just an insight, but I really insist on these 2 points. First one, there must be a manager appointed, someone who will have time to address the topic, to analyze the chemical products, to analyze the restrictions, restricted substances list, etc. It's a matter of giving time to this topic in the factory. And then you need to have some key documents and key tools as the one I mentioned. Okay. Let's go to the next chapter about wastewater treatment. So I will spend less time on the 2 last challenges. I want to show you, this is a breakdown of contaminants in textile wastewater. So you can see that we have different contaminants in the water. And what's interesting is to see that half of what is in this wastewater sample is salt. So I have a question for you. This is in textile, a textile mill, textile factory. It means fabric processing. Yeah. So we have a pool, a last pool question here. So I have two questions for you. First of all, do you think, you have to tell me if it is true or false, salt from wastewater, I insist in the textile mill, can be recovered, yes or no? And I will take the opportunity to ask another question about wastewater. Wastewater from a vegetable tanning factory does not need to be treated. True or false?
The result is quite overwhelming for both questions. It's interesting to see that.
Yeah, I was expecting this.
Particularly for the second question, most of the people, they have chosen on the same answer.
Okay, so we can see the results. Okay, so to the first question, can the salt from the wastewater be recovered? 66% said true. Indeed, this is true. Okay, I will explain it a little bit just after. And the second question, a majority of respondents indicated that it is false, that wastewater from a vegetable tanning factory does not need to be treated. Indeed, this is false. Okay, so first question about the salt from wastewater in a textile mill. There is a technology which is called the caustic recovery plant. Maybe, yes, you know some factories with this technology, and it is a system to indeed recover the caustic soda from the wastewater, and it can be reused in the production process. So that's quite impressive. So of course it is a big investment to have this caustic recovery plant, but it means also saving chemical product that you need to use in your production, because you recover the product in the wastewater and you can reuse it. So at the end, you will still save some money in purchasing chemical. And as well, with less salt in your wastewater, it means you will spend less money for the wastewater treatment. So there are some benefits. After this webinar, I will share with you a fact sheet about the caustic recovery plant. Regarding the second point about the vegetable tanning, so it's not because it is a vegetable tanning that the wastewater doesn't need to be treated. Even if you don't have all the heavy metals and toxic chemicals that you have in the chrome tanning, you have still some contaminants in the water. I want to say something. When we say contaminants and pollution, we are talking about a concentration of something, of a substance. So even if we have natural substance such as salt in the water, if there is too much salt, if it is too much concentrated, of course it's going to have a negative impact on the nature, because it's going to have some disequilibrium. I don't know if I can say a problem of balance. Indeed, the salt, if there is too much salt in the water, it means the water is going to be warmer, and if it is warm, if it is more hot, the dissolved oxygen availability in the water will decrease. So that's what's happened. What are the common problems with effluent treatment plant? So I made a list here. There is a lack of technical knowledge of the operators. Some effluent treatment plants are under capacity. Why? Because to save money, the factory is building a smaller ETP than the one which will be needed for the volume of wastewater generated. Many factories will prefer to have a chemical ETP rather than a biological ETP. So there are different types of treatment processes for the wastewater, and chemical is we can say a basic process. It's a very simple one because you just need to put chemicals in the water to obtain a certain reaction, and then you get a cleaner water. But you get also a lot of sludge, and this sludge is very hazardous. So you need to find a solution to handle the sludge. The biological ETP is more efficient for the wastewater treatment in textile. It's more adapted because it's microorganisms being used to treat the wastewater. But biological ETP require more monitoring, more skills from the operators. It requires more space, and it can be more expensive in terms of energy consumption because, yes, it's a very energy-intensive process. Another common problem with effluent treatment plant is that there is not enough testing of water quality parameter, or that they are not tested on a regular basis. As well as there is no maintenance undertaken to keep the effluent treatment plant tanks in good conditions. And of course, there is the issue of cost of operation. So what can be suggested to help the factories with facing this problem? So again, I think you need to remember that challenge one is a solution to many other challenges. So getting rid of hazardous chemicals is not only good for your final product compliance with regulations such as REACH, but it is also a way to have less hazardous chemicals ending up in the wastewater. And if you have less hazardous chemicals in the wastewater, you need a less important treatment process. So again, I always insist on the first priority, which is to try to avoid and substitute hazardous chemicals, even, of course, for the wastewater treatment. Then, of course, you can invest in the wastewater treatment process. And I think something very interesting I want to mention here. Okay, I noticed this in China mostly. Maybe you remember. In Chinese factories, I noticed different times that they have a computer, a software, which is helping to monitor the effluent treatment plant. And this is actually, I think, a very good idea because as in many production countries with effluent treatment plants owned by the factories don't have the skilled operators to operate the treatment plant. At least if there is this software and this computer helping to better control the effluent treatment plant, it is a good, it is an asset. It is going to support and make the process run better. So this is an idea. I also know that some companies building effluent treatment plants are thinking indeed to promote and to propose some software for the monitoring of the treatment process. Testing the water quality on site. I said this during my last webinar. I'm not saying that you must invest in a laboratory with certification, but you can purchase some instruments for the testing. Or, of course, you can also invest in skilled operators, but that's not always easy to do. Okay, very quickly, I will finish with the hazardous waste management challenges. I want to show you again some pictures of common practices. So this is the temporary storage, and it's mostly to show you what are the types of waste that we can have from the factories. So we have the empty chemical drums. We have, as you can see, the fabric leftovers and the cartoons. Here you can see again, I showed this picture showing the sludge from the effluent treatment plant, which is a waste which is generated in very, very big quantities. And this is a picture to show you some practice I observed in, this was in Cambodia. So you can see that it doesn't mean it's specific to Cambodia. I'm just giving some real case studies. But in this factory, some workers were in charge to burn the waste. So you can see these are some fabric scraps, fabric leftovers, and they're probably removed from the drainage system. So they might contain some hazardous substances, and they are burned. So you can imagine what is released in the atmosphere. Okay. Again, regarding hazardous waste management, as I said, if you start working on eliminating hazardous substance from the production, you will also have a positive impact on the waste management, because less hazardous substance in production means less hazardous waste. Yes, because hazardous waste is mainly coming from two sources, the sludge from the effluent treatment plant and the empty chemical drums. So the less hazardous substance you have in the production, the less you generate dangerous waste. I also indeed recommend to focus on these hazardous type of waste. Most of the non-hazardous waste generated by a factory, it's not even waste, it's a byproduct. And in many countries, believe me, there are very good systems to recycle and reuse the byproducts from the industry. But regarding the sludge and empty chemical drums, it's more complicated because you cannot do much with this. You cannot reuse it. The key is transparency. Ask the factories to investigate about the waste contractors' practices. We want to know what are the final disposal of waste. So it's not always easy to get this information, but it's important to communicate to factories that they have a responsibility to ask these questions. And in many countries, as per law, the waste contractors should be a licensed waste contractor. So it means it should be official waste contractors recognized by the government. And the practice of the waste contractors should not be a secret. It should be transparent what is done with final disposal. So investigating it's really important. And then, of course, the good practices will be to have good procedures for the temporary storage of waste, and also to minimize the waste generation. Switching from a chemical effluent treatment plant to a biological effluent treatment plant is a way to minimize waste. Because with a biological effluent treatment plant, you generate a very, very small amount of sludge compared to the chemical effluent treatment plant. So you see, all these three challenges are very much linked to each other, and the priority is to focus on hazardous substances in the production. If you get rid of these substances, you will also have positive impact on the wastewater management and on the waste management. Okay, so I'm done with my presentation. So with Fiona, we will have a look to your questions, because I see we have a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Francesca. There are indeed a lot of questions, and so I think when Francesca is reading all the questions, so just to let you know that we have a YouTube channel that we put all our recording up, and you can search for Eurofins Assurance to look for our YouTube channel. And in case if you are not our followers in LinkedIn, you are more than welcome to become our follower and stay updated of our events and upcomings. And also, a couple of you have asked where to retrieve the previous presentation file and recording. So I typed send you the website that are hosting the materials. So you can feel free to go to our website and download the presentation file and look for the recording at our YouTube channel. So because we are not doing any more form for you to fill in to download, so we hope by making the resources more accessible, will help you getting through this difficult time. So Francesca, shall I let you begin the QA section?
Yes, so I have selected 2 questions. You can see.
Yeah.
Fiona? Okay,
yeah.
We'll start with these 2.
Right. So the first one we are going to answer is about participant is asking, when we talk about RSL, are we also considering MRSL applicable to the chemicals?
Yes, I think I selected this one because it's very important to clarify that there are 2 types of restricted substances list. One is the RSL, so the restricted substances list, which sometimes is also named PRSL, for product restricted substances list. And indeed, maybe it is more clear when it is named like this, because product restricted substances list is a list of substance that you do not want to have in your final product. So it is specific to the final product. And most of the brands, they have this PRSL. So they focus on the final product. But there is another list, which is the MRSL, M for manufacturing. The manufacturing restricted substances list is a list of substances that we do not want to see in the production. So that's different. It means that the MRSL is, we could say, more strict because it says we don't even want the chemical to enter in the factory. Even if maybe it doesn't stay on the final product, still we don't want to see it in your factory, because we want to protect the workers and because we don't want the substances to end up in the wastewater and probably contaminate the environment. So what we discussed today, when I was mentioning the importance of having a manager in charge of chemical management, and when I was mentioning the toolbox, these aspects are important both for the product restricted substances list and the manufacturing restricted substances list. So the 2 type of list will be, I would say, taken into consideration in a factory when it is about getting rid of hazardous chemicals. And for the next question.
Yeah. And another question is about the environmental audit. So does the environmental audit cover both RSL and MRSL compliance, or are they subject to, or is the RSL or MRSL compliance subject to separate audit such as SEDC?
Okay, this is a very good question. Indeed, I recommend you when you are going to start with environmental audits to ask about the exact scope, and in particular to ask if indeed the compliance with the restricted substances list is included in the scope of the audit. As this is a very a complex topic, I suggest and I think in other companies could propose you this, is a dedicated audit about chemical management. We do have in Eurofins AQM an environmental audit covering some questions about the MRSL, but if you want to address this topic in details, probably the chemical management audit is the best audit option. Because during a chemical management audit, you will really go in the details to assess the chemical management system of the factory. And you will be able to get the information about how the factory is indeed purchasing, against which criteria the factory is purchasing chemical products, what are the test reports accepted, what is the testing process. Everything will be covered in the chemical management audit. So I guess this one is more adapted.
Right. So,
sorry, I will explain this next time, but the ZDHC is not providing an audit. ZDHC is an initiative providing the MRSL, the list, and they provide some tools to support the industry, but they don't do audit. But of course, many companies offering chemical management audit will tell you that they are aligned with ZDHC requirements.
Yeah, indeed, there is another there's another webinar explaining different initiatives like ZDHC, Acute on next Wednesday. So if you are interested in getting more knowledge on this, feel free to join our webinar next week. So I think let's leave some time for the takeaways. Francesca, I'll let you move on with the takeaway.
Yes, definitely. We go to the takeaways, and as I see there are many questions about restricted substances. We can consider later on to organize a webinar about this specific topic, but this will be discussed later, and you will be informed, of course.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so the key takeaway of today's webinar, I repeated myself a lot, but again, to start a phase out of hazardous chemicals in the production, the factory must be prepared in terms of management, awareness, and skills. So having a manager appointed, it's not only designating someone, but is making sure this person will have the time and will have objectives related to chemical management. So during an environmental audit, this is something which is checked. The auditor will interview the manager in charge of chemical management to make sure he knows how to read safety data sheets and other documents. Then the essential tools for the factory are the process to select chemical suppliers and some monitoring process to review the evidence of compliance with the restricted substances. This is just examples of what is needed in the toolbox. Regarding the wastewater, the challenge one will also help regarding the wastewater management. So focusing on the first one is the priority to have as well positive consequences on wastewater. I mentioned that there is a lack of expertise among wastewater treatment plant operators. So training operators or taking the time to recruit an operators with a skill is very important. And there are as well some technological solutions, software, and other options to control the effluent treatment plant, which can help the factory. If possible, switch to a biological ETP, because in this case you will produce less sludge, almost no sludge will be produced, and it means you will have two positive consequences. The first one is a better treatment of wastewater, and the second is less hazardous waste to deal with. Finally, regarding the hazardous waste, you should focus on transparency of local practices and identifying alternatives for the disposal of waste locally. This is one step, but again, also trying to focus on only on the hazardous waste, because as I said, the non-hazardous waste in textile is a byproduct which is very often reused and recycled. So the priority should be on the sludge and on empty chemical drums. So thank you very much, everyone, and we will have a last webinar in 1 week.
Yeah, thank you, Francesca. So some of you have asked me about the registration. So you can find the details of the last webinar at our website shown here, aquarium-textile.com/able-special. And hope to see you again next week. And before you leave, we just want to ask you for a favor. You have seen a survey form popping up at your browser. So after the webinar, we would appreciate if you can just spare 2 minutes completing the survey form for us. So I hope everyone will stay safe, stay healthy, and hope to see you again next week. Thank you everyone again. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Have a good week.